In many parts of the modern world, a name is often treated as a simple convenience, a label chosen for how it sounds, how unique it feels, or how well it fits into social trends. Parents flip through books, scroll through lists, or follow popular culture, selecting names that are fashionable, easy to pronounce, or aesthetically pleasing. But in many African traditions, a name is never just a label. It is a living force, a spiritual imprint, and a declaration of identity that reaches far beyond the surface of everyday life. And where naming a child is an act that can shape the course of their destiny. Across diverse African cultures, there exists a shared belief that the universe is not silent. It speaks, guides, and reveals itself through signs, symbols, and spoken words. Within this worldview, language is not neutral. Words are seen as vessels of energy, capable of influencing both the visible and invisible realms. A name, therefore, is not merely something a person is called. It is something a person becomes. It carries intention, memory, and spiritual significance. When a child is named, they're not only being identified, they're being introduced to the world with a specific purpose, one that is often believed to align with forces beyond human understanding. In this context, knowing someone's name is a deeper act than it might seem. It is not just about recognition, it is about connection. A name can reveal the circumstances surrounding a person's birth, the emotions of their family, the history of their lineage, and even the hopes or fears that accompanied their arrival into the world. In some traditions, a name may tell a story of struggle. Perhaps the child was born after a long period of loss or during a time of hardship. In others, it may reflect gratitude, joy, or divine intervention. Each name becomes a narrative, a compressed story that unfolds over a lifetime. What makes this perspective especially powerful is the belief that names are closely tied to the spiritual realm. Many African traditions hold that ancestors remain active participants in the lives of the living. They guide, protect, and sometimes correct the course of their descendants. Within this belief system, the act of naming a child is not done lightly or randomly, because it is thought that the ancestors themselves may influence or even reveal the appropriate name. In this sense, a name can be seen as a message, one that comes from beyond the physical world, carrying insight about who the child is meant to be. This understanding creates a profound contrast with more modern or globalized views of naming. It can sometimes strip away the deeper layers of meaning that traditional practices preserve. Such a choice might be seen as incomplete, lacking the connection to ancestry, circumstance, and purpose that gives a name its true power. It is not that modern names are inherently wrong, but rather that they may miss the opportunity to anchor a person within a larger spiritual and cultural narrative. In many African communities, a name is also believed to have a performative quality. It does not just describe reality, it helps to create it. To call a child by a name that means blessing is to continually speak blessing into their life. To name a child, one who has overcome, is to affirm resilience and strength as part of their identity. Over time, these repeated affirmations are thought to shape not only how the individual sees themselves, but also how they are perceived and treated by others. The name becomes a kind of guiding force, subtly influencing choices, behaviors, and life paths. This belief in the power of names also extends to the idea that misnaming or naming without proper consideration can have consequences. If a name carries negative connotations, unresolved history, or spiritual imbalance, it may be believed to affect the individual's well-being or fortune. This is why, in many traditions, the process of naming is approached with care, consultation, and ritual. It is not a decision made in isolation, but one that involves family, community, and often spiritual intermediaries who can interpret signs and ensure that the chosen name aligns with the child's destiny. It challenges the idea that identity is purely self-constructed or sluchina assigned, suggesting instead that there are deeper currents at play, currents that connect us to our past, guide us in the present, and shape our future, between who we are and who we are meant to become. As we begin this exploration into the spiritual weight of names, it becomes clear that naming is far more than a cultural tradition. It is an act of meaning-making, a moment where language, belief, and identity converge. And within that moment lies a powerful question, one that echoes across generations. If a name can carry destiny, then what story does your name tell? And what path might it be quietly shaping for you even now? If names carry spiritual weight, then the moment they're given must also carry deep significance. In many African traditions, a child is not named immediately after birth. Instead, there's a deliberate pause, a waiting period that allows the family and community to observe, reflect, and in some beliefs, allow the spirit of the child to fully settle into the world of the living, that the child has truly come to stay. During these early days, the newborn is often kept close, protected, and quietly observed, or even dreams experienced by family members that might hint at the child's nature or spiritual origin. In some traditions, it is believed that ancestors communicate during this time, revealing through visions or intuition the name that the child is meant to carry. This period of waiting is not empty. It is filled with listening, interpreting, and preparing for a moment that will define the child's identity for life. When the day of the naming ceremony arrives, it is not treated as a casual family gathering, but as a sacred rite of passage. The ceremony often brings together elders, relatives, neighbors, and sometimes spiritual leaders or diviners who play a crucial role in guiding the process. But as a witness to a profound transformation, the moment when a child is formally welcomed into the community and recognized as a bearer of lineage, history, and destiny, the setting itself carries meaning. Whether it takes place in a family compound, a village courtyard, or a sacred space, the environment is often prepared with care. Symbolic objects are arranged, each representing elements of life and spiritual balance. Water, for instance, is commonly used as a symbol of purity, clarity, and truth. It may be touched to the child's lips as a way of welcoming them into a world where truth must be spoken and lived. Palm wine or other traditional drinks might also be presented, symbolizing joy, community, and a shared experience of life. Kola nuts, in some cultures, serve as sacred offerings, connecting the living with the ancestors and inviting their hodurun into the ceremony. One of the most important aspects of the ritual is the role of elders, individuals who stand closest to the ancestral realm due to their age and experience. Their voices carry authority, and their blessings are believed to have real spiritual impact. During the ceremony, elders may speak words of guidance, pronounce blessings, and sometimes even reveal the chosen name. In certain traditions, the naming is not simply announced, but is spoken with intention, repeated multiple times, and sometimes accompanied by prayers or invocations that call upon the ancestors to witness and affirm the choice. In some cultures, such as among the Yoruba, the naming ceremony, known as Isomolaruko, includes a series of symbolic actions that introduce the child to the essential elements of existence. The child may be given small tastes of different substances, water, salt, honey, pepper, each representing different aspects of life. Water signifies purity and truth. Salt represents preservation and wisdom. Honey symbolizes sweetness and joy, while pepper may represent the challenges and hardships that are also part of the human journey. Through these gestures, the ceremony becomes a form of teaching, a way of saying, "This is the world you have entered, and this is what you must be prepared to face." The naming ceremony ties the newborn to their family, their ancestors, and their community. It acknowledges that identity is not formed in isolation, but through relationships that stretch across generations. The child is given a name, but they are also given a place within a lineage, within a story, within a network of spiritual and social bonds that will shape their life. In some cases, multiple names may be given, each carrying a different layer of meaning. One name might reflect the circumstances of birth, another might honor a respected ancestor, and yet another might express a hope or prayer for the future. These names are not redundant. They are complementary, forming a fuller picture of the child's identity. Over time, some names may be used more frequently than others, but all remain part of the individual's spiritual and cultural inheritance. There is also an understanding that the act of naming must be done correctly. If performed carelessly, without proper respect or alignment, it is believed that the balance between the child and the spiritual world may be disrupted. This is why the involvement of knowledgeable figures, elders, diviners, or spiritual leaders, is so important. They help ensure that the name is not only meaningful, but also appropriate, harmonizing with the unseen forces that are believed to influence human life. As the ceremony concludes, the atmosphere often shifts from solemnity to celebration. Music, dance, and communal feasting may follow, marking the joy of new life and the successful completion of a sacred duty. Yet beneath the celebration lies a deeper awareness. Something irreversible has taken place. A child has been named, and with that name, a path has been set into motion. In this way, the African naming ceremony is far more than a cultural tradition. It is a moment where the physical and spiritual worlds meet, where identity is not just given but revealed, and where a simple word becomes a lifelong companion. The name spoken on that day will echo through the years, carried in every introduction, every call, every memory. And within it will remain the quiet power of the ritual that first brought it into being. In many African traditions, a name is never empty. It is filled with meaning, layered with intention, and often shaped by forces that go beyond human choice. To outsiders, a name may simply sound beautiful or unfamiliar, but within the cultural and spiritual framework from which it comes, it carries a message, sometimes subtle, sometimes direct, but always significant. This message may speak of the past, reflect the present, or point toward the future, and in many cases, is believed to originate not only from the living, but from the ancestors themselves. One of the most striking aspects of African naming practices is how closely names are tied to the circumstances surrounding a child's birth. A child born during a time of hardship may receive a name that acknowledges struggle or endurance, serving both as a record of what was endured and as a declaration of strength. A child born after a long period of loss or infertility might be given a name that expresses gratitude, relief, or divine intervention. In this way, the name becomes a living memory, preserving a moment in time and carrying it forward into the child's life. But the meaning of a name does not stop a human experience. In many beliefs, the ancestors, those who have lived, died, and continue to exist in the spiritual realm, play an active role in guiding the naming process. It is often said that ancestors are not distant or silent. They remain present, watching over their descendants, offering protection, and, at times, communicating their will. This communication may come through dreams, visions, or strong intuitive feelings experienced by elders or parents. A name may be revealed in such moments, not as a suggestion, but as a directive, something that must be honored to maintain harmony between the living and the spiritual world. In some cases, a child may even be believed to carry the essence or return of a particular ancestor, and the name given reflects that connection. This does not necessarily mean a literal reincarnation in every tradition, but rather a continuation of spiritual influence or presence within the family line. Naming a child after an ancestor, therefore, is not simply an act of remembrance. It is an acknowledgement that the ancestor's spirit, qualities, or unfinished purpose may still be active. The name becomes a bridge, linking generations in a way that transcends time and mortality. Beyond reflecting origins and connections, names are also understood as expressions of intention. A name might mean God has answered, joy has come, we are grateful, or strength endures. Each time the name is spoken, it reinforces that message, almost like a quiet affirmation repeated throughout life. In this sense, naming is not only descriptive, but creative. It helps shape the reality it describes. The child grows up hearing their name, internalizing its meaning, and consciously or unconsciously aligning with the path it suggests. At the same time, not all names are purely celebratory. Some carry warnings, reminders, or protective intentions. In certain traditions, a child who is born into a family that has experienced repeated infant loss may be given a name that discourages harmful spiritual forces or deceives them. Such names might translate to phrases like "this one will stay," or even deliberately humble or deflect attention, as a way of safeguarding the child's life. These names reflect a deep awareness of vulnerability and a belief that words, when chosen carefully, can offer protection against unseen dangers. What emerges from all of this is the understanding that a name is, in many ways, a kind of spiritual contract. It defines a relationship between the individual and the forces believed to shape their existence: family, community, ancestors, and the divine. It carries expectations, not in a rigid or limiting sense, but as a guiding framework. To bear a name that signifies leadership, for example, may come with an unspoken call to act with responsibility and courage. To carry a name rooted in gratitude may encourage a life lived with awareness and humility. Over time, as a person grows and moves through different stages of life, the meaning of their name may deepen. What was once just a word given at birth begins to reveal itself through experience. Moments of challenge, success, loss, or discovery may echo the very message embedded in the name, reinforcing the belief that it was never arbitrary. In this way, a name unfolds alongside the life it accompanies, its significance becoming clearer with each passing year. This perspective invites a different way of thinking about identity. Rather than seeing identity as something entirely self-made or sluchina assigned, it suggests that there are patterns, messages, and influences that precede and shape the individual. A name, then, is not a limitation, but a compass, something that offers direction while still allowing for personal choice and growth. In the end, the meaning behind an African name is not confined to a dictionary definition. It lives in stories, in memories, in spiritual beliefs, and in the everyday act of calling and being called. It is a message that begins at birth, but does not end there, continuing to speak, guide, and resonate throughout a lifetime. And for those who believe in its power, a name is never just spoken. It is heard, felt, and lived. If a name carries meaning, intention, and spiritual connection, then it is only natural within many African belief systems to see it as something that does not merely describe a life, but actively shapes it. The idea that a name can influence destiny is not viewed as metaphorical, but as something real and observable, woven into the experiences of individuals and families across generations. A name, once given, begins to move with a person, spoken by others, repeated in moments of joy and hardship, echoing in both public and private spaces. And through this constant presence, it is believed to gradually mold the path that unfolds. In this understanding, a name that carries a blessing is more than a hopeful wish. It is a force that continually calls that blessing into existence. A child named with words that signify prosperity, strength, or divine favor grows up surrounded by those affirmations. Each time the name is spoken, it reinforces a narrative. You are protected, you are chosen, you are meant to thrive. Over time, this repetition can shape not only how others perceive the individual, but also how the individual perceives themselves. Confidence, resilience, and a sense of purpose may take root, supported by the quiet but persistent influence of the name they carry. In this way, destiny is not imposed from outside, but cultivated from within, nurtured by language that affirms possibility and direction. There are many stories shared within families, villages, and cultural memory of individuals whose lives seem to align uncannily with the meanings of their names. A person given a name that signifies leadership may find themselves naturally stepping into positions of authority. Another whose name reflects endurance may face repeated challenges, yet consistently find the strength to overcome them. These stories are not always told as coincidences, but as evidence of a deeper truth, that the name given at birth was not Sluchena, but carried insight into the life that would follow. Whether one interprets this as spiritual guidance, psychological influence, or a combination of both, the pattern remains compelling. Yet alongside the idea of blessing comes the recognition that names can also carry burdens. Not every name is light, and not every meaning is easy to bear. A name that reflects struggle, loss, or conflict may serve as a reminder of difficult circumstances, and in some cases, it may be believed to attract or reinforce those very experiences. Within certain traditions, there is a concern that a poorly chosen name, or one that does not align with the child's spiritual path, can create imbalance. This imbalance might manifest as persistent misfortune, a sense of disconnection, or challenges that seem unusually heavy or repetitive. When difficulties arise, some families may look beyond the visible causes and consider whether the name itself could be part of the problem. This does not mean that every hardship is attributed to naming, but rather that the name is seen as one piece of a larger spiritual puzzle. If it is believed that the name is contributing to imbalance, steps may be taken to address it. One such step is the practice of renaming or adding a new name, often accompanied by ritual. This is not done lightly. It is approached with the same care and spiritual attention as the original naming ceremony. Elders, diviners, or spiritual leaders may be consulted to determine the appropriate course of action, ensuring that the new name aligns more harmoniously with the individual's path. The act of renaming is seen not as erasing the past, but as correcting or realigning the trajectory of the future. It reflects a belief that while destiny may be guided, it is not entirely fixed, that there is room for adjustment, healing, and transformation. Beyond the spiritual dimension, there's also a deeply human and psychological aspect to how names shape destiny. A name influences how a person is addressed, how they are remembered, and how they are introduced to the world. It can affect first impressions, social interactions, and even opportunities. A name that carries respect within a cultural context may open doors, while one that is misunderstood or carries negative associations may create barriers. In this sense, the power of a name operates on multiple levels at once: spiritual, social, and personal, each reinforcing the other in subtle but meaningful ways. For the individual, becoming aware of the meaning behind their name can be a transformative experience. What may have once felt like a simple identifier can suddenly take on depth and significance. People may begin to see patterns in their lives that resonate with the message of their name, leading to a stronger sense of identity and purpose. In some cases, this awareness brings comfort, offering a feeling of being guided or supported by something greater. In others, it may bring a sense of responsibility, as the individual recognizes the expectations or intentions embedded in their name. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that names do not act alone. Within African thought, destiny is shaped by a combination of factors: personal choices, community influences, spiritual forces, and life circumstances. A name is powerful, but it is not absolute. It offers direction, not limitation, influence, not control. This balance allows for both reverence and agency, recognizing that while a name may point the way, it is the individual who ultimately walks the path. In the end, the belief that names shape destiny speaks to a broader understanding of the world, one in which words are not passive. Identity is not Sluchena, and life is not entirely without pattern or meaning. A name becomes both a gift and a responsibility, something that can uplift or challenge, guide or test. And as it is spoken again and again over the course of a lifetime, it continues to do its quiet work, shaping not only how a person is known, but who they become. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, the way people name their children is also changing. And with that change comes an important question. Are names losing their spiritual power, or are they simply taking on new forms? Across many African societies today, tradition and modernity exist side by side, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in tension. Urbanization, globalization, migration, and the influence of Western culture have all contributed to a shift in how names are chosen, understood, and valued. What was once a deeply spiritual and communal act is, in some cases, becoming more individual, more aesthetic, and more detached from its original meaning. In many cities, it is now common to find children with names inspired by global trends, names heard in movies, music, or social media, chosen for their modern appeal or international accessibility. Parents may select names that are easier to pronounce in global contexts, especially if they envision opportunities for their children beyond their home country. In this process, traditional names, often rich with linguistic nuance and cultural significance, can be set aside or replaced. The shift is not always intentional or dismissive. Sometimes it is driven by practical concerns, a desire for social mobility, or the influence of changing environments. Yet, even when unintentional, something subtle may be lost when a name is separated from the cultural and spiritual framework that once gave it depth. This does not mean that meaning has disappeared entirely, but rather that it has evolved. For some families, the act of naming has become more personal than communal, more about individual expression than collective identity. A name may reflect the parent's aspirations, creativity, or global awareness, rather than a message from ancestors or a reflection of lineage. In this sense, the center of meaning shifts from the spiritual realm and the extended family to the nuclear family and the individual. The question then becomes whether this shift weakens the power of names or simply transforms it into something different. At the same time, there are many who resist the idea that traditional naming practices should fade away. Across the continent and within diaspora communities, there is a growing awareness of the importance of cultural preservation. Some parents intentionally choose traditional names as a way of maintaining a connection to their heritage, even when living in modern or foreign environments. Others combine both worlds, giving children multiple names, one that fits into global society and another that carries deep cultural and spiritual meaning. In doing so, they create a kind of balance, allowing the child to navigate different spaces while still remaining rooted in their identity. There are also renewed efforts to educate younger generations about the meanings behind traditional names. Elders, scholars, and cultural advocates are documenting languages, preserving oral histories, and sharing the stories embedded in names that might otherwise be forgotten. Through media, literature, and digital platforms, these traditions are finding new ways to survive and even thrive. What once existed primarily within local communities is now being shared on a global stage, inviting not only Africans, but people from all backgrounds to reconsider the significance of naming. Yet the tension remains. In a fast-paced, modern world, where convenience and trend often take precedence, it is easy for deeper meanings to be overlooked. A name can quickly become just a sound, stripped of its history and intention. When that happens, the connection between identity and ancestry may weaken, and the subtle guidance that names once provided may become harder to recognize. The loss is not always obvious, but can be felt in the gradual fading of cultural memory, in the distance that grows between generations, and in the quiet disappearance of stories that were once carried in a single word. And still, despite all these changes, the core idea that names have power has not entirely disappeared. Even in modern contexts, people continue to feel that their names matter. They notice how their names shape first impressions, how they influence belonging, how they carry pieces of identity into every interaction. Some may not describe this in spiritual terms, but the effect remains. A name still introduces you before you speak, still lingers after you are gone, still becomes part of how the world remembers you. Perhaps the real question is not whether names are losing their power, but whether we are becoming less aware of it. Power does not always vanish. Sometimes it is simply unrecognized. The traditions that once made that power visible, ceremonies, rituals, communal involvement, may be fading in some places. But the underlying truth may still be present, waiting to be rediscovered. In moments of reflection, people often return to their names, asking what they mean, where they come from, and what they say about who they are. In those moments, the old understanding begins to surface again, reminding us that a name is never entirely empty. As we reach the end of this exploration, one idea remains clear. A name is more than a Sluchina chosen word. Whether shaped by ancient rituals or modern choices, it carries identity, intention, and connection. The forms may change, the practices may evolve, but the human desire to find meaning in names endures. And so, the question returns, quiet but persistent. If your name holds a story, a message, or even a destiny, are you listening to what it has been saying all along?